Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. Thank you for joining. Author in the Headlights, as I hope you know, is a project sponsored by Durham Publishing, where we bring to you, our listening audience, information about books to read, of course, but also about the authors that wrote them and the story behind the story. That's the cool part. And today we have Beth Bacon, a friend of mine. We actually shared a table at a book show. We met and bumped into each other, and now we contact fairly often. Beth does kids' books. And you go, okay, who does stories about kids' books? Read some, novels. That's where the thing is. But if kids don't learn to read, then where are we down the future? So I have her books here. Here's one, the book no one wants to read, which isn't what you would expect from a kid's book. Well, maybe you would. So Beth, welcome to our show. And why did you choose kids' books?
Thanks, Strider, and thanks for inviting me. Why did I choose kids' books? Actually, it's just the most natural place for me. When I started writing, one of the things that I love mysteries also, and I wrote this sort of like suspenseful mystery about a woman who was a spy, and all these like people were chasing her. And my husband read it and he was like, why does it sound like a teenage girl? And that's just my voice. I have a very young voice when I write, and I also really, really respect kids. I believe that the best children's books are actually the best books out there. When you think about your favorite book, maybe in the top few, for everyone I ever ask, it's always a book they read when they were a child. If you look at the top 10 grossing movies, many of them were originally written as books for kids, whether it's Harry Potter
Absolutely.
or, even the Tolkien books. Really, most kids read them when they're 11, 12,
Young
13 years
adult,
old.
action adventure, things that catch their attention. Sure.
So, I've never believed that kids are not fully thoughtful, important people. And I think stories for children are important.
So when you have a book called The Book Nobody Wants to Read, why would kids want to read it?
Yeah, a little bit of reverse psychology, but that book actually came from a real experience. I used to work at an elementary school library, and at that school, every class had a session at the library once a week, and they were required to check out one book. And there was always a group of kids that I saw, and they went right to the game and puzzle and joke book section. And that was because they were like, hey, if I get a maze book, it's a book, but I don't have to read anything.
Absolutely.
And I always looked at them, and they were always like having a great time over there in the joke book section, and they would come over with their, like Guinness Book of World Records or a maze or a puzzle book or something. And I was like, I wonder if I could write a game and puzzle and joke book that also had literary elements in it. What if it had a main character who grows and changes? What if it had a narrative that required the reader to participate and think about it and make their own judgments, in addition to having games and puzzles and jokes? Sure. And so that was kind of like a challenge I had for myself. And I was like, I don't even think you can do that. Can you give a puzzle book a plot? And that's what this is. So the book itself is the narrator, and the concept is that the book is like, I'm so lonely, nobody wants to read me. And it's like, oh, you picked me up. And so the book talks to the kid.
It talks to
the
kids.
It's like, sure. Oh, you picked me up. Great. Do you want, you're one of those kids that thinks reading is really boring. Okay, I'll make a deal with you. How about if I make it fun for you and you just sit there and turn my pages because I just want to be off the shelf a little bit? You've now got a character, and I make it a flawed character because this character has been on the shelf for so long that they don't really know how to fight fair, or like he's like making jokes and bad jokes and sort of teasing the person and cheating in the games a little bit. Then the book main character realizes that it's kind of nice to have a friend, and it's kind of nice to like have somebody to interact with, and realizes that, oh, you got to be like on the level if you want to have friends, and you have to give and take some, and so the main character sort of grows and changes into a better person or a better book. And then by the end, it's really sad, and it's like, oh, I don't want you could go back to page 1 if you want. So it was a really fun sort of challenge to myself to try to get those kids that don't like to read to give them what they like, which is mazes and puzzles and jokes and optical illusions. They love the optical illusion books. Yeah. Those are all in the book, as the book itself is like sort of talking and interacting with the reader.
Literally, she was almost reciting page by page on her book. I have read the books, and I do like to read, but you have to start somewhere, and that's cool. And the neat thing, an author's point of view, I would think, is also novels tend to have a very short shelf life, honest, but books like this can last for decades and decades and decades. I go back to books that I read when I was a kid, and they're still available in the market. So the potential of selling with long periods of time and still have your book marketable is awesome. That's really great stuff.
Librarians and schools are buying. There's also a companion book to this one called the book I Hate Reading. And that book
I have that one too, but I don't have it on my table here.
It's kind of like a non-narrative, like very meta book, meaning the book interacts with the kid. And it's like basically a self-help book for kids who hate to read. And the thing is about it is that it is super funny. And so kids who don't like to read get through it. And at the end of it, they're like, oh, I just read this and I was literally laughing out loud. Maybe it's not reading that I hate. Maybe I just haven't found the right book, or maybe I just need a book that's more at my level. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times when you have like 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds who have a very, very low reading level, there aren't a lot of books for them out there. But these books, they're like 120 pages each. So my readers have told me,
which may
like,
sound
this
like
is great.
A lot to somebody who's not reading. But when you look at a page and you flip a page and you get a page like this, it doesn't take a lot.
And the kids are like, hey, Mom, I read a 120-page book.
Exactly.
And
so they're not afraid of big books versus the little, 10-page books.
Right. There's cool. So much peer pressure at that age. And when their other kid is reading like, Harry Potter, and they just can't get through a full chapter book.
Because they can't.
At least this has the heft.
Capable of doing that. Their mind hasn't matured enough to pick up all that context.
Yeah, but they will. They will eventually, book like this
3, 4, 5 times. They read the book again and again because it's still a challenge, but it's still fun. So that's something they can do. I like that.
So I go to a health club, and the woman that works at the front desk at the health club has an 8-year-old kid, and I gave her one of my books, and she said the other day, my daughter was going to sleep over at her grandparents' house, and she was like, I want to bring my favorite book, which was the book no one wants to read. And then she said what her daughter did, which was so hilarious to me, was she literally copied the book in her notebook herself. Like she somehow, I don't know why she was inspired to do it, but she rewrote the book word for word and brought that to her grandparents' house. And I thought that was so cool because, cool. When readers take ownership of the books they read, that's the thing about reading. You have to participate in it when you read. Everybody who reads something, they're making the meaning in their head. And that's a thing that's very hard and complicated when you're learning to read. You have to concentrate, and you have to take those things on the page that are squiggly lines that we call letters, give them meaning, add that together to make a word, then bring that word into your brain, have it make sense to you, and then think about what's happening. It's so much work
Totally
for a
understand.
little kid. I think that it's so wonderful that this little girl decided to like sort of take it on her own and literally rewrite the book herself and bring that one to her grandparents and read it
That's
with them.
awesome. In fact, that very same process, my wife Pam was a school teacher, now an assistant principal, but in her classes, in her English classes, she actually had them write books and stories and then do artwork to, and multiple, and staple them together, just 10 pages. But beginning, middle, end, the process, and a third grader to build a book. And they get so into it because they're processing all of this stuff. They're learning that not only the words themselves, how to spell them and take it, but the thought behind what's happening here. Where did they go? Where are they ending up? That character arc in a third grader, second grader, she's taught virtually all up to fifth grade, where they're actually producing things. It's amazing. And it's part of what our mind has to do to develop and grow.
Literacy is an activity. It's a participatory activity. And to be literate is to participate in making meaning when you read the books. And so all of that stuff is very, sort of theoretical, but that theory comes into practice in my books. I'm like, how can I do that? How can I make it really active for these kids? You do have to kind of sit still when you're reading, but your mind isn't still. Your thoughts aren't still. And so gaining that ability is really hard work for kids.
But now for your specific type of writing, which is to young readers, what is your process? How do you go about that? I mean, we probably have people listening that, I could do that. I could do a 50-page book, pictures which is a whole lot more process than you might think. Well, what do you do to go about writing your books?
There's a couple of ways I can answer that. First, generally, I come up with a concept or even a question or a challenge for myself. Like that book, I was like, can I write a book that has games and a plot? Other ones are like, I'm really interested in this story. Like I have a book about a pair of twin pandas that were born at Zoo Atlanta. And that's a traditional nonfiction picture book.
Panda cub swap, yes.
Yeah, I was just so fascinated by these twins. And what they did is they swapped out every few hours. One cub was taken care of by Lun Lun, the mom panda, and the zookeepers in the back room would take care of the other one. And then they would swap it out because it was so much work. And I just thought that had so many interesting parallels to any mom's life or parent's life.
I have that book too.
Yes. And, having twins was interesting. And just how do you take care of a panda? In the process of reading the book, you realize what it takes to develop from a super tiny panda cub into a more independent cub.
Everyday life, we don't think about every day. It just happens.
Yeah.
But it's
and pandas are so cute.
They are cute. Artwork is critically important in kids' books. And if you go down through the shelves and see the ones that you as an adult would pick up versus ones the kids would pick up, and are they the same or not? How do you go about your artwork?
Traditionally, if you want something published with a publisher, as a writer, you write the manuscript and you send it in, and they pick out the illustrator and do that part of the production.
That's probably news to most people.
Yeah, but that hasn't really been the process at all for any of my books. I've always been very involved in the visual elements of my books. Some of them, like the Panda Cub swap, I actually conceived it with my friend who is a fine artist, Anne Belov, and she loves pandas. And we're like, let's do a panda book together. And so that from the very start was a cooperative project. And now publishers are so busy that they actually appreciate it if you go to them as a team. And it's best of all if you're a writer illustrator yourself. And I've actually just finished a book that I illustrated myself. Yeah, and I have another book that's coming out next March. It's called The Grandmother Effect. And that one also I wrote together with a young woman who wants to be an illustrator, and I loved her style. And I was like, let's do a project together. And I have so many grandmothers who purchase my books, and then they're the ones that send me emails and messages. And And so I just thought, wouldn't it be cool to write a story that honors grandmothers?
So you just keep going, keep expanding.
Oh,
So,
the other thing that I wanted to say about writing picture books, it really is a very specific genre. And so if there's someone out there who wants to write picture books, I would say go to the library and the bookstore and pick out all kinds of books. And what I did to learn, I literally copied them. I copied the words, and then I wrote, I had 2 columns. What were the words and what was the picture? What was a word and what was a picture? And I really understood the structure of
learned structure of how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I figured fine artists go to the museum and
Absolutely.
they copy a painting. And so what I did to learn was I copied picture books. You'll learn how short they are. You'll learn about the drama of a page turn. That is a rhythm that picture books have that a lot of other books don't. You learn about what is being sold
Differently.
today. Because if it's been a while since you read a ton of picture books, you will be really surprised at how short they are these days.
Now we're kind of running out of time here. See if we can get down to the end of this project. So you've got tons of books, you've got new ones coming out, you're developing new stuff. Where do they find this stuff?
I would say go to your local indie bookstore. And if they don't have it on the shelf, ask for it, because that's really good. Because
Absolutely.
if somebody asks for a book from an indie bookstore, maybe they'll order like 2 of them, and they'll give you the one you ordered and put the other one on the shelf so someone else can read it. Because there's so many new books coming out all the time.
Your books are also linked on Durham Publishing webpage. The best thing in the world is to have somebody actually read your book.
Yes,
that's what we write it for. Not just for us, though it is for us too. It's part of our life and joy, but to have others share that. And 100 years from now, maybe they'll pick up and go, gosh, they were pretty cool.
Oh, and another thing I would say, if you like my books, take a minute and write a review.
Hear, hear.
Somewhere online, because it's unbelievable how important those reviews are. And
we'll be having you back if you would like to come back, and we'll discuss that, because that is something that's really powerful in the writing industry. How do you find the books and how do you get them out there to people? And as authors and would-be authors or people listening, what does it take to do that? So we'll have you back. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. If you're an author, think about selling to the algorithm in addition to selling to the human people out there as well. All right. We're going to have to end this. I'm sorry, because we could just keep going and going and going. This is Author in the Headlights, sponsored by Durham Publishing, and we'll be back again. Stay tuned, and we'll have Beth Bacon back also. Thanks, Strider. Good to talk to you. Bye. Sponsored by Durham Publishing. Check them out at durhampublishing.com.